You know, I used to believe that loyalty was the one currency that never depreciated, that a handshake deal between friends was stronger than any contract. Let me tell you a story about how I learned that sometimes the person you'd trust with your keys will sell the whole car out from under you. My name is Leo. My old man was a mechanic, and his father before him. I grew up in the scent of high-octane fuel and the symphony of a well-tuned engine. It wasn't just a job, it was a language. For 10 years, my life was the embodiment of that legacy. I was the wizard under the hood, the one who could diagnose a problem just by listening to the purr of a car. And my best friend, Marcus, we met in Mr. Henderson's auto shop class in 10th grade. He was the charismatic kid who could talk the teacher into an extension, and I was the one who actually did the work on his project car. We were an unlikely pair, him in his clean sneakers, me with grease already under my fingernails, but it worked. We built Gearhead Haven from a single bay with a leaky roof into the busiest independent shop in the valley. I poured my soul into every engine I rebuilt. He built a community. He remembered every customer's name, their kid's birthday. He was family. We were brothers. I spent more Thanksgivings at his mom's house than my own. He was the best man at my wedding. We were the guys other guys pointed to and said, "That's what real friendship looks like." We ate cold pizza on the fender of a '69 Camaro, talking about opening a second location, about teaching classes. He believed in me, or so I thought. The proposal came about a year after my divorce. I was vulnerable, I'll admit it. The business was my rock. Marcus knew that. He came to me with this merger. A big corporate chain, Precision Auto, wanted to absorb us, make us a flagship. He had the papers, thick as a phone book. "This is our ticket, Leo," he said, his eyes bright with that old excitement. "This secures our future." No more worrying about the mortgage. He played on my fears, on my need for stability. And I, like a fool, I signed. I didn't even have a lawyer look at it. I trusted my brother. The change was immediate and brutal. The first clue was when they handed me my new stiff white uniform with a Precision Auto Senior Technician patch. No more Gearhead Haven. Then came the 200-page rulebook. No more custom jobs, no more talking directly to the customers. All communication went through a service advisor who didn't know a carburetor from a camshaft. 60-minute oil changes or your pay gets docked. I was a mechanic on an assembly line, my artistry reduced to a series of mandated billable steps. I went to Marcus, now the general manager, in a corner office with a view of the lot he used to sweep himself. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. He stared at a spreadsheet on his monitor and said, "We have to be professional now, Leo. This is the big leagues. Sentiment doesn't pay the light bill." The man who'd held my head over a toilet after my bachelor party was now talking about shareholder value. My own family, the one I'd chosen, had been bought out, and I was the last to know I was just a line item on their budget. Have you ever felt the soul get sandblasted out of something you love? Every day, I'd look at a classic Jag and see a barcode on its windshield. I'd hear a customer's story about their first car and have to cut them off to stay on schedule. I was dying a slow, quiet death in a crisp white shirt, watching the ghost of my father's legacy fade from my hands. But here's where the story changes. There was this old-timer, Eli. He ran Eli's Auto Graveyard, a junkyard on the edge of town I used to scavenge parts from as a kid. He was a friend of my dad's. He'd heard what happened through the small-town grapevine. He found me one day staring into the engine bay of a minivan like it was a coffin, and he just knew. He walked over, didn't say a word, just tossed me a set of rusty keys, the keys to a collapsed roof storage shed on the far corner of his property. "Walls are yours if you want 'em," he grunted. No paperwork, just a handshake, the way things used to be. So I started the shed. Just me, a flickering fluorescent light, and the ghosts of cars past. I took on the jobs no one else wanted, the orphans, the lost causes, and word got out. The little old lady who Precision Auto said needed a $2,000 transmission? I found it was just a loose solenoid. fixed it for the cost of the part and a cup of tea she insisted on making me. My waiting list stretched to a month. People didn't mind the dirt floor or the smell of old motor oil. They knew they were getting the truth. Then came the real truth. Sarah, my old service writer from the Haven, a good woman who'd been with us from day one, she couldn't take the corporate nonsense anymore. After she quit, she dug through some old boxes and found the original merger documents Marcus had hidden. He hadn't just sold the business. He'd signed a non-compete clause for me without my knowledge, a clause that was completely illegal but was meant to scare me into submission. And the buyout money? My half of 10 years of sweat and blood? It was a pittance, a fraction of what he'd pocketed for himself. He hadn't just secured his future, he'd sold mine out from under me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. He'd sold my name, my reputation, my right to make a living with the skills my own father taught me. He'd tried to bury me in corporate concrete. But something interesting happened while I was building the shed. Precision Auto started failing. Customers felt like numbers. The good mechanics, the ones with passion, quit. And Marcus, the charm wasn't working on the regional managers. The numbers were all that talked, and they were screaming. Sarah showed up at my shed one day, a folder of documents in her hand. She apologized for not speaking up sooner, tears in her eyes. She said the place was a ghost of what we built, that the community we'd fostered was gone. She said Marcus was a prisoner in his own glass office, paranoid and miserable. And you know what? Knowing he was miserable didn't feel like victory. It just felt sad. It was the funeral for a friendship I'd already mourned. The anger had burned out, leaving only the cold ashes of what was. Then came the day I knew was coming. Marcus showed up at the shed, no suit, no smile, just a man hollowed out by his own ambition. Precision Auto was letting him go. His wife had left him, taking the kids. He stood there in my kingdom of rust and redemption, surrounded by the honest work he'd abandoned, and he asked me, his voice cracking, to remember who we used to be. I looked at him. I saw the ghost of the boy I'd built a treehouse with, the man I'd called my brother, and I made a decision that felt less like forgiveness and more like closure, a way to finally lay that ghost to rest. I pointed to a chaotic stack of invoices and parts orders on a dusty desk. I told him I needed someone to handle the books, the admin work, no customer contact, no management, just paperwork and phone calls, for an hourly wage. He'd be my employee. People ask me why give him anything? And here's the raw truth. I didn't do it for him. I did it for me, to prove that what he took, my integrity, was never his to steal. That in my world, in this dusty, honest shed my father's friend gave me, even a broken promise can be a part you learn from. You don't throw it away. You examine it, you understand why it failed, and you keep it as a reminder. The shop is called the Shed because sometimes the most valuable things aren't found in the shiny showrooms. They're found in the quiet, forgotten places where you rebuild everything from the frame up, starting with yourself.